Alright, we're going to do a header install today on this 2006 Nissan Altima. It'll be pretty much the same procedure for an O-tune up with the QR25DE engine, 2.5 liter 4-cylinder. So we're going to take the factory exhaust manifold off and replace it with this header from XS Power. It's made by XS, but I bought it from Mark Racer X on eBay. These cars, this engine is notorious, especially the earlier years, especially with the Sentra Spec-V, for the catalyst material in the cat down here busting up, and certain RPMs of vacuums created, and it sucks pieces up into the engine and basically destroys the engine. Altimas don't have that problem so much because they're not generally driven that hard like the Spec-V Sentra is, because it's a sports car. You know, most people are just driving these back and forth to work, not hot rodding them. But I hot rod everything I own, so we're going to get that header on there to make sure nothing happens to the engine. So I'm going to start by trying to get this exhaust shield off here. So every single bolt we're going to try to take off. Let me just say it now, you're going to want to spray it down with PB Blaster to try to break these loose. Let them soak for a good 10-15 minutes, spray them again, let them set for another 10-15 minutes. All these bolts are going to be really rusty, and to try to avoid stripping them out, we're going to need to hit them with PB Blaster a couple times to try and loosen them up so we can get them out. If you want, you can take this plastic cover off too, like if you want to use a ratchet to try to get these bolts out instead of a regular wrench, which I'm going to do. That's in the way, so I'm going to go ahead and take this plastic cover off. It's just a few of these. Well, these are Allen wrench heads. A few of those hold that on there. That's dumb. I've never seen Allen wrench heads before. Hope that they aren't rounded out. So I'll have to go grab my Allen wrenches so I can take these bolts out so I can get the cover off. Sometimes the oil cap will hold them back, but on this one it doesn't look like it does. So we just take these bolts out and the cover will come off. Well, to my surprise, got it out. They're all these little tiny 10mm bolts, and then you got to unclip from your O2 sensor wire here, and there's the factory yummy manifold. I'm gonna spray the bolts, the mounting bolts that are holding this on. These actually don't look too bad. I'm gonna get under the car and spray the bolts where this connects to the downpipe. Alright. So there's this one lovely little mounting bolt back here behind the alternator. So we're gonna have to remove the alternator. There's your nasty little spring bolts that hold this downpipe here, or mid pipe, whatever you want to call it, to the exhaust manifold, the header. So you want to spray those, and then also get the spray up here on the other side of the manifold where they go through. Get spray up there on both sides as well. Looks like that bolt right there is probably holding it too. Spray that. That thing's loose, huh? It's just coming out. Looks like that whole bracket holds it in there. Right down there, that is your tensioner pulley. So you got to get a 14mm wrench on it. It's real tight space. Get the 14 on there, and then you're going to push it down. It's kind of hard to do one-handed. You see it move? See that? Okay. So you're going to need a little bit of leverage. You might have to use a bigger wrench than that, but 14mm. Push it down on it, and that pulley will go backwards and relieve tension off the belt so you can pop the belt off. Now, since we're removing the alternator, you have positive cables running to it, so you're going to want to disconnect your battery first before you mess with that, or you will get shocked. One other thing you want to do before you disconnect the battery is unplug your mass airflow sensor. Sometimes some cars, when you reconnect the battery, the surge going through the electrical system can fry them. So the easiest way to do that, push down, relieve the tension, and then slide the belt off of this smooth pulley here. Just slide it off, and it'll come right off. You don't even have to push the tensioner down all the way, just enough so you can loosen it to slide it off. Alright. Pop this off of here. So you take your nut off your positive there. Pay attention if sometimes there's multiple pieces that go here. This one's just one, but sometimes there's 2 and 3 different things that loop over this bolt here before you put that back on, and you would want to put it back on in the same order. But this one just has one. This one here, I'm about to lose it. Okay, gotta unplug this one. That's neat. It looks busted. Unless the, I mean, usually there'd be a tab sticking up out of here. You'd push it in and unplug it. I guess it's just this whole thing right here. I don't know. It, like, something broke and shot a piece of plastic out at me. But push in this tab and pull it out. Then you're hung up here. You got to squeeze in these tabs and pop this out. I'm just going to pop it out here. That way I can pull this whole thing forward so I have a lot more room. Again, there'll just be squeeze tabs on the back of this. Squeeze them in and pull it out. Looks like 2 mounting bolts. There might be another hidden one somewhere. We'll find it if there is. One here. And then you got the one down there. Also, you're either going to have to remove this bracket or pop this hose out. But I'm going to take this bracket out, move the whole thing, and it'll give me more room to get to that bolt. So guess what? This stupid little fuse box is in the way. I can't get that bolt out all the way to pull the alternator out. So now I got to remove this fuse box. So, and this overlaps. I gotta take 2 10mm out of this coolant reservoir. Pick this up. Damn cable gets caught here. Pull it up out of the way. It'll spill out of that, so be careful with that. Keep it angled up. Looks like a mounting bolt. And who the hell knows. Alright, so that one you're going to need a deep well 10mm socket, because the head of the bolt sticks up too far for a short one. It's not going to go down on it enough so you can get it out. Mine just broke off, so that's cool. And then this little tab here, you have to depress. It attaches to this bracket right here. Push in the tab after you have the mounting bolt out, and the whole thing will just... And then you can get that freaking bolt out. Nope, I lied. It's hitting the bracket. So these 2 wonderfully rusty little... Yeah. Alright, so those were a 12mm for whatever possessed reason. I can get my bolt out if I hadn't put it on a bind first, not realizing that that needed to come out first. There we go. Jesus Christ. Have fun getting that thing out. You know what? Since this has to come out, take this out first. Then you can get whatever you need down in there. I spent, I don't know, 15 minutes with hardly any room going, trying to get it out. Now that I know you got to take this shit out, just move it. And then you can use whatever and have plenty of leverage. Had I known that, I would have took that out in the first place. So this thing should be free now. They usually stick a little bit on this because it's clamping here, and on the other side you just got to wiggle it and pull it out, which is like impossible for me to do and record. Alright, like I said, they really stick, because this and this is usually pretty tight where it mounts. If you have to, you can try to pry it out, but you got to be careful what you pry against. Like, this is probably aluminum and will bend, so if you can't get it yanked out, you have to find the correct spot to pry from and try to tap it out of there or whatever. So now with the alternator out of the way, there's the manifold that we need to get to. I think this is where some of them, I see this dent here. This is the factory manifold. I see that dent in it there. Some of them people were having to put the dent in it so that it would clear the alternator. So hopefully we don't have that issue, but that's definitely part of what I've seen with the cheaper ones, is that they don't clear the alternator like they should, and then you have to put that dent in them. So hopefully this one goes on there without having to put that dent in there. These are going to be pretty straightforward, and like I said, they don't look that bad. So I'm going to go ahead and do these bottom ones first. They've sat for quite a while I did that alternator, so go ahead and see if I can get these out and pop it apart, and then we'll take the exhaust manifold off. Alright, so these weren't wanting to come out. My impact couldn't even bust them loose. What you can do, first of all, an impact's going to really help you a lot. If you're just going to sit there and use a ratchet or a breaker bar, you're going to wear your arms out, and you have a higher potential of breaking these bolts off, which doesn't really matter if you're replacing it, because it'll just come out with the broken pieces and it doesn't matter. But the problem I just ran into, okay, first of all, you can go back and forth on them, forward, back, to try and loosen them up some. And again, that's after spraying the crap out of them. After you've done the forward and back thing, you can spray them again. Maybe it loosened it up so it can soak in more. So I managed to get this one out. This is my impact gun. And then this one stripped the head. So that's a 14 millimeter or a 9/16, so they both fit nice and snug. But that one rounded the head. Now I had this happen on the Toyota. So what you got to do is get Irwin bolt extractor sockets. And I'm going to go grab those real quick and show you how they work. Alright, so here's the extractors. Like I said, they're Irwin. Okay. So what you got to do is find one. So I almost stripped that one. That fits the snuggest. Like, you don't want it to go, well, obviously that's not even touching, but you don't want it to go clear up to the base. See, like right there is probably about right. You don't want it to go clear up against the base, so you can probably find one that's tighter. And you also don't want it clear out on the head like that. Somewhere in the middle to 3/4 down. If you can get it to go all the way down, then you might strip it again, even with these things. So you try to find the smallest size you can that will go down over the head. It looks like for me it's only one that's actually even going to touch. But on the Toyota, I did it where one of them went all the way down. It bit a little bit, but you want one that doesn't go all the way down. That way you know it's going to really bite in there. So you got to put as much pressure on this as possible. If you don't put enough pressure on this with your socket and wrench and whatever you're pushing on against, it's still going to spin on this bolt, and it's just going to cut a gash in it. So you need these little teeth to bite into that bolt head, which means as you're turning it, you got to push that down on there as hard as you can and maintain that pressure so it bites in and does not slip. It's a lot easier with an impact gun, but so that's one we got out. So the round one's going to be even smaller. Oh shit, now we're running into this problem. It's too freaking long. So now my head isn't going to fit in there. That's wonderful. So I'm probably going to have to get under there with my cutting wheel and cut the tip off so my socket will fit over with the ratchet in it. Alright, so I got it on there. If you have to, hammer that sucker on. If it just barely fits, whack that thing on there. So I got it on, I hammered mine on, so now I'm going to hit it with the impact and hope it comes out. But initially the impact wasn't even bringing it out, so hopefully it's a little looser now, and hopefully it'll back out. If not, I'm going to have to crank on it by hand and try to put a lot of pressure on it and turn it at the same time. So be careful if you cut that tip too, like I did. Cut into your oil pan here. I just barely nicked the lip of it, so that doesn't matter, but be careful. Alright, remember when I was talking about getting one that went halfway down on it? I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried, and eventually ended up spinning on it. So now I can actually get a slightly smaller one on there that only goes down about 1/4 of the way. So I'm going to try to hammer it on there. This is sat overnight with PB Blaster on it. My impact doesn't have enough power to get it out. I need a more powerful impact. But I charged the battery overnight, so it's a fresh battery charge. This thing sat overnight with, I don't know, about 5 applications of PB Blaster on it. So hopefully I can hammer this next one on there and rip this thing out of there. If not, I'm gonna have to use somehow try to put enough pressure on it with a breaker bar and see if I can get it out that way. So one more try with my impact. All right, almost came right out. So spraying the shit out of it 5 or 6 times and then letting it sit overnight freed it up. First try came right out. All right, so that's detached. Should be able to just unbolt this thing now. So on these, on mine, it's 9/16 or 14. 14 seems to fit a little snugger. You want the snuggest one. And, well, you might not need a deep weld. Depends on how short your socket is. But if the tip of that sticks through there too much, you're not going to be able to get your ratchet all the way attached. All right, there's all the manifold bolts. So there's 5. Careful not to drop them down in there. On this bottom one here, I held my magnet to the side of it so when it came off it wouldn't fall. So it should be free now. I mean, it's going to be a little stuck on there because of the gasket, but oh wow, that came right off. Sometimes they're stuck. It depends on the type of gasket. The squishy one that came with it is going to be the type that sticks. These little metal ones don't stick so much. So let me get that thing out of there. Duh. I'm going to put one of these bolts back on. I got to take the O2 sensor out first. Same thing. These things are usually pretty seized in there. I should have done this yesterday. Spray the crap out of it with the PB Blaster. Let it set. A lot of times you end up rounding these off. The tool you're going to need for these, you don't want to use, okay, you don't want to use an open end wrench like this. You want to use a, what's it called? A line wrench. I'll show you. That might not be the right term, but that's what I call them, a line wrench. So obviously you can't get the other end of a traditional wrench over this. You don't want the flat wrench like I just showed you, because it'd only be making contact on 2 points. With a line wrench like this, you get a contact on all sides except for one. It'll slide over the line like this, and then you slide it up and over this. So we should be able to find one that's the right size that'll slide over this entire sensor so we can make contact on all but one side. That way we don't risk stripping it out. Well, not stripping it out, but rounding the head off. Alright, apparently this is a 22. I do not have a 22 in a line wrench. My 7/8 fits. Let's see, it's loose. 21 does not fit. 22 does. So it's still got a little play, but it's less. And from what I looked up, it says it's a 22, so I've gotten them off with these open end wrenches like this before. It's just sometimes if they're really tight, you can round off the head, and then what do you do? So a big adjustable wrench would probably work too. It might even work better because you can tighten it down to where there's no play. But since this is such a big size, I'm gonna go ahead and try it. I know about the limits if I'm pushing too hard, if it's gonna start rounding or not. So I'm gonna try this, and if not, I'll see if I can find my open end wrench. All right, surprisingly, it came loose pretty easy. As you can see, I didn't even come close to rounding it. So yeah, there's some kind of fuse in there. It didn't want to come out here. I think you pop this little contraption off, and then maybe now I can unplug it, I'm thinking. Yep, okay. And then I gotta get it off of this little breaking plastic. There's some tab under there I undoubtedly have to release also to get it off this metal bracket. I had to bend it up so I could see it and show you guys. There's a little metal tab right there you gotta pull down so you can slide this off. Alright, it should come right out now, so be careful on your dipstick here. And your radiator hose. And And there is your factory manifold. Here's what you're left with. Take your old gasket off. And then we're going to need to clean all this shit up. Also, I wish that kit, dark here, I wish it had came with the gasket you need. There's a lead gasket or whatever it is that's, oh well, it's not that tight. It goes around. So basically you need to clean this up. So you got a clean mating surface for the new gasket. Get all this crap off. Try not to spray anything in the head. Spray it on the rag to wipe off. If there was any old gasket material left, you'd want to use a gasket scraper to scrape it off. But because of the type of gaskets that it had, there's not any material left. Now the kind we're installing, if you ever take it back off, it's definitely going to have shit stuck to it. But I usually just use, and there might be more specific things you can use, but I usually just use brake parts cleaner and wipe all this crap clean. So that's probably about clean enough. I would have liked to got some more of that stuff off, but that'll probably be okay. Also, if you do use a scraper to get any of this off, make sure you keep it nice and flat against the surface. You don't want to angle it and cut into your head, or it may not seal. So this is a stock exhaust manifold compared to the new header. Flip it over here. You want to make sure not to touch this with your dirty ass hands, or that shit'll burn and discolor it. I mean, it's going to discolor some anyways, but try not to have any grease and crap on it. It's shaped differently. The light pick this up right there. See deeper in where it constricts. I don't know, about 10 millimeters in. Right here. It gets, you can tell the ports are bigger. These are rounded and they're a larger diameter than what this constricts to. Okay. So I don't think that this stuff's gonna matter here. Alright, so this is with the gasket. Hopefully the freak there, you can still see the restriction after the gasket. See how it chokes down? And I'm gonna wipe this off because this gasket's dirty, but it's definitely larger. Okay, there's very little restriction after the gasket. Alright, so there's your new gasket. So again, don't get this dirty either. Go ahead and set that on there. Yeah, and see, here's what I was talking about. The gasket, see, look at that, is much bigger around than the ports. So anything that's larger than this port itself on the new piece, that's all the flow you need. The only way there would be a restriction is if the port size on the head was larger than this, which it's not. It's more like the size of where this steps down. All you need to do is match this size here at a minimum for maximum flow, which usually the stock ones, they restrict down smaller than this. After that, it comes down to tube design and all that, where you pick up your power and the scavenging and whatnot. Alright, well, unfortunately, this isn't wanting to slide on there. You can see this bolt is all the way to the outside of that hole there. And this bolt, if I can get this thing to fuck, is all the way to the outside on that hole. So basically I just need a little more material taken off so it'll slip over on either side, or do a little bit on both, because it's not fitting over. If I try to tap it on like that, it's going to fuck up the threads on those studs, and then I won't be able to get my nuts back on and torque down properly. So I'm going to have to take this back off of here and drill out those holes a little bit so that it'll slip over. These other ones are lining up just fine. It's just those outside ones, the holes are slightly off centered, so it's not wanting to go. So I guess while I'm at it, I should absolutely check for clearance with this alternator, since we're having this issue anyways. And like I said earlier, some people had an issue with clearance here. So before I get this thing bolted down, if I need to knock a dent in that, I'm going to go ahead and throw that on there, see if that's going to be what I have to do before I get any further. Well, I'm going to have to drill on it first, because I got to be able to push this all the way back. Let's see. Once it's all the way back, it might clear. I don't have this pushed all the way back either. It's going to be real close. So let me get these holes drilled out and get it on there all the way to see if it's going to be a problem. Alright, there we go. I took just the slightest amount of material off. Like a millimeter or two maybe on each side. Probably a millimeter each side. Maybe 2. 1.5. But it's on there now, so I just had to take a little bit off each side and it slid right on. So I check this alternator on here now and see if we're going to have a clearance issue. Fingers crossed. Yeah. So I ran the bolt back through to make sure it was in the right location. And yeah, see, I got to tip it all the way up here so it'll bolt up. And yeah, we're definitely hitting there. So that's wonderful. And seems to be by a lot. Like, I gotta put a big ass dent in there. I hate my life. So you can tell these tubes are considerably smaller. This is the factory unit, and it's got a dent in it. So did they literally put dents on them from the factory because they realized they fucked up and the alternator wouldn't fit? I find that hard to believe, but it wouldn't surprise me. After all, they're the ones that designed it to kill itself, because this breaks up and sucks up in the engine. And then on top of that, the tube's a lot smaller, and it's got a sharper bend coming out. So the dent in this one has to be much larger. Which, if I'm doing that, what's the hell is the point of a header? Because I'm going to have maximum power on these 3 cylinders and about half the power on that cylinder. It's fucking retarded. Alright guys, I figured out a way around it. I've never even seen anybody suggest this. Everyone always just puts a dent in their freaking header. So, not me. I took away that nub off the alternator. Now yes, there's a little, I ended up wearing through the material here a little bit. If you're a little more careful than that, you won't put a hole in it, but it doesn't really matter anyways, because look at the alternator. It's full of holes for cooling and venting. So the fact that I put a little tiny hole there on that nub doesn't even matter. Okay, if you're that concerned about it though, take away material more from the tip than back here. I started out using my cutting wheel and I cut the edge of that off, and then I used my Dremel to take a little more and a little more and a little more away until it cleared. Okay, so the bolt is started down here. It is threaded into the other side. If this thing would fucking focus, I got the top bolt in too, so the alternator is in position. That is where it goes. So instead of denting your header and suffering a performance loss, why not do that? Like I said, that little hole shouldn't matter because your alternator's full of holes. And if you do it just right, you can avoid that hole anyways. You need to take it off that front there. So this is, so I can rock it a little because the bolts are loose. It's between ever so slightly touching and ever so slightly not touching, but haven't tightened this down yet. Once you torque this down, it's going to squish in that gasket about 1 millimeter. It's going to go about another millimeter forward. So that's going to give me the clearance I need right there. All I need is 1 millimeter, okay? So that alternator, all the bolts are in. This one's down. The bottom one started all the way through. That's where it's at. Now I'd be worried about that rattling, because there's about a 1/2 millimeter of clearance in there. And this might shift a 1/2 millimeter once I tighten it down. But like I said, once I torque this manifold down, this manifold is going to move this header. It's going to move away from the alternator at about another millimeter. So I have the clearance I need. So I have not had to heat this up and hit it with a freaking hammer and dent it, suffering no performance loss. And also doing that, if you even have a torch and all that and can get it hot enough, on top of the performance loss, you're risking breaking the damn thing or putting a crack in it. So I don't know why anyone never thought of this before. I've always just heard of people having to put dents in them. But shave that little corner off your alternator. That's what I did. Alright, so I contacted Mark, the guy I bought this off of on eBay. So apparently he's just a distributor. It's Excess Power, I believe, is the brand, and he sells them with his little angle piece as a kit. And so he doesn't build them. He gets them from Excess, and then he sells them. So I told him what was going on. I asked him if this was typical or not. You know, I said the reason I spent more for years was because I had seen where with the cheap ones, people were having fitment issues with the alternator and that primary, and they were having to beat on it with a hammer to get it to fit. And I said, surely you haven't been selling these things for 16 years, you know, knowing that they needed beat with a hammer or anything like that, you know. Plus he has pretty good feedback. So he said no. He said every once in a while he'll get a couple out of a batch where there's a fitment issue there, but for the most part it's not a problem. Just every once in a while, every few years, he'll end up getting a couple of them. So without hesitation, he offered to give me a partial refund since I had an issue with it. So he actually sent me $75 back on this. So all things considered, that's a happy outcome for me. So, you know, he's just a distributor, so it's not his fault that it didn't clear, but he still made it right in my mind, in my eyes. It absolutely made it right by sending me $75 back. You know, you guys seen I'm making it work by shaving down the alternator, but according to him, this is not typical, although every once in a while he does get a couple where there's some fitment issues. But he took care of it for me, so still happy with the purchase. But prior to buying this off of him, I actually went to XS Power, their website, and it's a little cheaper on there, but it doesn't come with the angle piece. But I had emailed them and asked them a question about it. I believe it was about the clearance issue. It may not have been, but I remember I emailed them and asked them something about it, and they never responded. So I didn't feel comfortable buying anything from a company that or website that couldn't even respond to a simple question, because I've seen before where websites look legitimate and it was actually another car part website, and ordered something, never got it, said, hey, where's my part, never heard back from them. So basically got ripped off. It was I don't know if it's a scam website or what, but anyways, it made me very uncomfortable buying this from them, even though it seems that it's the same company that he gets them from and sells them. The fact that they wouldn't even answer my question, I steered away from that, and I ended up buying this one on eBay off of him. And I would still recommend doing that because it comes with the little angle piece, so your check engine light isn't on like we discussed. But on top of that, he's been really good with communication. I have multiple back and forth emails with him even before I had received it. And it answered all my questions about installation and whatnot. And then with the issue I had, he even made it right. So I would still recommend buying it off of him if you're going to get one of these. So anyways, I just want to throw that information in there real quick so you guys know what's going on. But we're going to finish this install now. So actually, got to go get these bolts tomorrow and the donut gasket and all that. So I'm going to finish everything else. That way tomorrow I can just go get the bolts, bolt that up, and then we'll be done. So now I need to torque the header down. Alright, the torque sequence for this is 29 to 32 foot-pounds of torque. 1, 2, 3 in that order. 4, 5. Okay, and then you're supposed to go back and retorque 1 and 3 to the same specifications. Apparently, after you torque down in that pattern, it may loosen the number 1 and number 3 slightly. I generally like to go over it a few times to make sure nothing has come loose, but not sure if that would be advisable under this circumstances, since it's actually telling me to go back and retighten 2 in particular. I'll probably go over the whole pattern. You know what, I'm just going to do it the way it says. So they're numbered. This one first, then that one, then that one, then that one, then that one, and then go back that one, 29 to 32 foot-pounds of torque. Alright, so I'm going ahead with the maximum of 32 foot-pounds because I don't want anything coming loose. Okay, now this one down here, it's going to be a little difficult to get to because these primaries are bigger and it's in the way now, whereas on the factory one it wasn't. Now mine still fits at a slight, very slight angle. I'm just going to go slow like that, a little bit at a time. Okay, now if you can't get your torque wrench to fit in there, what you're going to want to do is get a short extension, okay, with one of these pivoting heads. Okay, don't use a swivel joint like that because that's going to fuck your torque number all up. So if you have to, use one of these pivoting heads. See, it'll let it pivot just a little bit, a small angle like that, that way you can get your wrench on the end. Don't use a swivel joint. But for me, I'm rubbing on the header a little bit there, but I'm just going to go slow and get it like this. I might have to two-hand this one because of the angle. Yeah, I got to make sure it's not going to slip off. Rubbing right here a little bit too. 1, 2, 3. All these are coming loose as I tighten it down. Well, because it's squishing in the gasket. There it was. And number 5. Oh, I'm gonna need a little extension. I'm hitting my bracket here. And these extensions can throw it out. You don't want any angle like that. I'm gonna try to hold it with both hands and keep it straight like that. So that's what I'm gonna do. All right. So like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then go over the number 1 and then the number 3 again, and you're done. I went over them again. Number 1 didn't move at all. My number 3 turned about 1 millimeter. So now we're all torqued down. I'm going to work on getting the rest of this crap hooked up. Reinstall the 2 bolts for your alternator. Anywhere between 25-30 foot-pounds is going to be good for those bolts. So now that it's fully installed as far as the mounting bolts go, there's my clearance. About 1 millimeter. So yeah, you could completely avoid that hole. Unlike you guys, I didn't really know exactly where I needed to take material off, so you can see from this video where you need to take it, that corner there. You wouldn't have to put a hole in it at all. And also, you could patch that with like JB Weld or something if you wanted, but I'm just going to leave it because it'll be fine. Get your bracket there reinstalled. Bracket back on the alternator. Plug it back in. my positive cable back on here. I'll plug this back in down here. Coolant reservoir bolted back down. We need to get our O2 sensor put back in, so it goes on the top bank. This lower one here was for other years or what have you, with different parts or multiple O2s or whatever. But it goes up here on this one. It's a 06. So we just need to tighten this one to close this off and take this one out so that we can install the O2 sensor. And remember, don't plug this in until you've screwed that in all the way and tighten it down, because you need the wire to spin so you don't bust the wiring up. Alright, so I got the plug tightened down. I got our O2 tightened down, routed under this here and over the radiator pipe through here. Got it plugged in. And then remember, this interesting little thing goes over top. Slide it back on your metal tab here. Remember, we had to bend this so I could see it. Alright, so I need to get the belt back on the alternator and all the other pulleys now. So like I said, the wrench is still on there. Turn it to relieve the tension. Then your easiest way, once you have it routed correctly, you're just going to slide it over this smooth pulley here. Don't try to do it on one with the teeth or anything like that. Get it all routed correctly. And then with the slack removed, slide it over the smooth pulley and then release the slack, allowing the tension. It's going to be way easier if you have two people for this. Have somebody pull down or up, whichever way it was, on the tensioner to relieve the tension so that the other person can slip the belt over. Don't forget the little negative one here. Bolts into this bracket. Tighten that down. Alright, belt's back on. Check all the pulleys. Make sure you're lined up here. I had this one not quite over all the way. And then the one back here, same deal. It was off to the side a little bit. You want to make sure you get them all on there all the way. You got to start the car and it's not on there, you can shred the belt. Reconnect your battery here. Tighten her down. After the battery is tightened back down, then you can go ahead, plug your mass airflow sensor back in. So that's everything up top. And I do this little angle piece on the other O2 sensor down there because this is an 06. Like I said, that's what I'm doing on 06. Certain years had O2 sensors in different locations or something. Like I said, it's all set up for whatever you need. If you need further clarification, just if you're getting it from Mark, just ask him and he'll tell you exactly what you need to do if it's not clear in the listing. Yay, more problems. Alright, look at this wonderfulness. So my downpipe here was down here, so I had to slide it over the lip that comes off the header that the donut gasket goes on, right? It's all I could do to get it over that and slam on there. It's smashed all the way against this. Like, basically this header's too long. It's smashing up against this. I can't even align it to bolt it up because they're just smashed against each other. I can't bolt that together. I can't get a donut gasket in there. I'm gonna stop the video here and try to gather myself and see what the hell I'm gonna do about this and email him. Alright, so this is a new header. This is an SRS header, which Mark also sells. Basically, we ended up swapping them out because I was having such an issue with the other one. This header cost a little more than the excess power that I originally got. He asked me to send the excess back to excess, which I did. And since I got an upgrade here, I didn't have a problem paying to ship that back to them like he had asked. So this one fit a little better, but I did still have some fitment issues. So right here I'm showing you under the car where I tried to line the first one up. This is the SRS though right here, and you can see it doesn't line up too bad. What I'm displaying here is I was able to put it over with one hand. Whereas with the XS, it took 2 hands and all the strength I could muster to slip it over. Alright, so your factory bolts look like these. Okay. And they have a thread on the end with a stopper and all that crap. You're not going to want to use that on the new header because there's no threads. This is designed to thread into the manifold here. See? But your new one, your aftermarket one, well, I guess there is threads. Well, if there wasn't, which I didn't think there was, depending on which one you get, may not. You may just need to use a universal like this, or the thread could be different. It could be a different thread pattern or whatever. Anyways, these universal ones will work for that, whether the threads... Shit, well, I guess it's gonna have to be the same to thread in there, huh? Looks the same. If there was no thread holes, you would need to use one of these universal ones, throw the spring on, and then get nuts for the end of it. So, well, hopefully that's the same thread now. It looks like it's the same. Alright, this thing's already a little cockeyed, but when you install these, you want to go back and forth from side to side. You don't want to tighten one down all the way first and then the other. You could end up having that thing cockeyed and smash that gasket in there more on one side than the other. You want a nice flush fit. So looks like I gotta get this side to go more first just because of the way it's sitting to even it out. But generally speaking, you give one side a few turns, then go to the other side and give it a few turns, then go back and give it a few turns, go back to the other side a few turns. You want to go back and forth until you've tightened it down as much as you intend to tighten it. Alright, so I just started it. It's just beginning to heat up. You're going to see smoke pretty much everywhere. This new gasket, it's going to get hot and it's going to smoke like crazy. That's how it seats. It basically burns itself to the header and it burns itself to the head, and that's what creates the seal. The rest of this is going to smoke if you touch it with greasy fingerprints like I did, and your donut gasket down there might smoke a little also. Sit here and let it idle, let it get up to fully operational temp. Once it's at full operational temp, let it idle for another 5 minutes. The thing's going to sit there and smoke. And I've done it before. It'll sit there and smoke for a half an hour sometimes. So you want to let it get full op temp, let it run a few minutes after that. You should have a decent seal by then, but you do not want to go full throttle on the car until you have a complete hot and cold cycle so that gasket can seal. Don't be hard on it until then. You want to be very easy on it if you do drive it until then. Well, we've been running about 10 minutes now and there's no real smoke to speak of. It all just kind of dissipated. I've done others where it just smokes like crazy, but this one is already done smoking. Now if I go take it down the road, it might start to smoke a little bit again because it's going to get hotter while I'm driving it than at idle. But just because it stops smoking doesn't mean it's good to go and you can just floor it either. Like I said, one complete heat cycle and cool down cycle and then you'd be good to go. Well, that about does it. Thanks for watching, guys. Please hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Hopefully this video, well, not only is it instructions on how to do your header, but you see the kinds of troubles you can run into. So if you guys run into any similar problems, now you know what you're going to be dealing with and how to handle it. And then also I've shown you guys what to look out for so you can avoid the problems and do all the checks before you get yourself in too deep. But anyways, if this video helped you out or you appreciate the video, please hit the like button. Leave me a comment, tell me what you think. See you guys next time.